They say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. But what if that first step feels too heavy to take? What if you don't know where to start, or if you'll even make it? Sometimes that one small step is the one that changes everything. There was once a young man named Daniel. He dreamed of climbing mountains, not just the ones made of rock and ice, but the mountains that life builds inside us. Fear, doubt, and the feeling of not being enough. Daniel grew up in a quiet little town, a place where people lived safe, predictable lives. Every morning he watched them rush to jobs they didn't love, come home tired and fall asleep, wondering if life had more to give. He promised himself he would never end up like that. He wanted to chase something bigger, something meaningful. But life has a way of testing every dream we dare to have. After finishing school, Daniel tried everything. He sent out job applications. No one called. He started a small business. It failed. He tried again and failed again. Little by little, that fire inside him dimmed. He told himself, maybe I'm not meant for more. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And before he knew it, he wasn't moving forward anymore. He was just standing still. One afternoon, Daniel went for a walk through the park, trying to quiet the noise in his head. There, on an old wooden bench, sat an elderly man feeding birds. His hands trembled a little, but his eyes were calm, peaceful, like someone who had already made peace with life. Daniel sat beside him. For a while, they didn't say a word. They just watched the birds hop and flutter around, searching for crumbs. Then the old man said, "Funny thing about these birds, they never think twice before flying. Even if they fall, they take off again." Daniel gave a small smile. "I wish I could do that," he said quietly. "I've fallen too many times." The old man turned to him and said, "Then maybe it's time to stand again. You can't finish a journey you never start." Daniel frowned. "But I don't even know where to begin." The old man smiled. "Start anywhere. The first step doesn't have to be big, it just has to be real." That night, Daniel lay awake thinking about those words. Start anywhere. The first step doesn't have to be big. The next morning, he decided to try. He didn't make a grand plan or promise to change his life overnight. He simply took one small step. He got out of bed earlier than usual. He opened the window and let the morning sun fill his room. He cleaned his space, and while he worked, he whispered to himself, "This is my first step." No one saw it. No one applauded. But something deep inside him began to shift. That single act of movement, that one step, was enough to remind him that he still could. The next day, he took another step. He wrote down everything he wanted to do, no matter how far away it seemed. The day after that, he started learning new skills online. And for the first time in years, he felt alive again. Of course, it wasn't easy. The road ahead was full of challenges. There were days he felt exhausted, and nights he wondered if he was foolish to keep trying. But every time he thought of giving up, he remembered the old man's words. The first step doesn't have to be big, it just has to be real. He realized something powerful. Failure wasn't the end. It was a part of the journey. Each mistake taught him something new. Each setback made him stronger. And slowly, step by step, he started building something that felt like purpose. Years later, Daniel stood at the foot of a real mountain, a tall, snowy peak he had always dreamed of climbing. The air was cold and sharp. The path looked long and endless. But this time, he didn't feel fear. He smiled because He finally understood that every mountain begins the same way, with one step. He tightened the straps of his backpack, took a deep breath, and began to climb. The higher he went, the harder it became. His legs ached, his lungs burned, and sometimes he had to stop to catch his breath. But he kept going, step after step, breath after breath. And after days of climbing, he reached the top. He stood there, tears in his eyes, watching the world spread out beneath him. The sky seemed bigger, the air tasted freer. And he thought of that moment long ago, on a park bench, when he told a stranger he didn't know where to start. Now he knew. You start where you are. You begin by taking one honest step forward. Maybe right now you're standing at the start of your own long journey. Maybe you're scared or tired or unsure of where to begin. That's okay. You don't have to see the whole path. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to take that first step. It might be small, making that call, sending that message, starting that workout, or even just choosing to believe that you can try again. Because every mountain, every dream, every victory begins the same way, with one step. When Daniel looked at the sunrise from the top of that mountain, he whispered the words that had once felt impossible. I did it. Not because he was stronger than others, not because he had it all figured out, but because he began when it would have been easier not to. And maybe that's what life is really about, not the 1,000 miles ahead of us, but the courage to take that first brave step forward. If this story speaks to you, remember, you don't need to take all the steps today. You just need one. Take it now, and soon you'll look back and realize how far that single step has taken you, because your journey begins today. Thank you for watching Shining Trails to Prosperity. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more stories that inspire hope, courage, and purpose, one step at a time.